Alright guys, I finally did it. A year of off and on play for a total of 76 hours, and I beat Shin Megami Tensei 4 Apocalypse. I'm still not completely sure on how I feel about it, but I'm hoping that this third attempt at a rewrite will at least close some doors. Yes, this took 3 drafts written from the ground up in order for me to be moderately happy with what you're seeing now. 3 whole drafts. The first 2 iterations of this script make this game look really forgettable and bad, and that isn't entirely true. I mean, yes, I forgot a bunch of stuff playing this game, but it took me a year to finish, so that's not entirely the fault of SMT4. And yes, the writing can be pretty bad at times, especially when it comes to a character we'll discuss relatively soon. But I shouldn't be ripping characters to shreds when it's entirely the fault of the writers. The characters don't really have much of a choice when it comes to "hello fellow children" kind of writing. So, in the spirit of the phrase "third time's a charm," let's go ahead and get started covering the plot and the characters. We play as a young hunter in training by the name of Nanashi, who dies trying to protect his childhood friend from getting ripped apart by a demon named Adramalik? Oh my god. Pronunciation warning from here on out. As you're making your way to the light at the end of the tunnel, you're stopped by a demon named Dagda, who proposes your resurrection. Of course, for a price. That price is becoming his own personal godslayer. You accept, and Dagda resurrects you, informing you that disobedience is not an option. You are just in time for your friend Asahi, but not in time to save Nakari and Manabu, your 2 trainers. You then set off to become a full-fledged hunter, memories of their loss still fresh on your mind. In your travels doing quests for the townsfolk, looking for bodies, so on and so forth, you meet the chosen messiah, a samurai by the name of Flynn, who comes from above the firmament. The firmament is the rock-solid dome that encases the ruins of Tokyo and keeps its people and its demons from reaching the eastern kingdom of Mikado, and in turn, the humans who live underneath God's light and guidance. After meeting Flynn, you're left pretty much to your own devices waiting on missions. While you're in the middle of doing a whole lot of nothing, a seedy old man, Odin, lures you to his free candy van with promises of glory. But there's no candy in this man's van. Instead, no, he tells you to go to his basement, Kanda no Yashiro, in search of that sweet, sweet reputation. So, being the dumb teenagers you are, you believe him, and you make your way to Kanda no Yashiro, where Odin beckons you to go touch his big stone, the Ark, and you do it because there's promise of candy inside. Well, surprise surprise, there's no candy down here. Instead, rubbing the old man's stones releases the Pied Piper, Krishna, and Krishna will remain as the main overarching antagonist for the entire rest of this game. Kinda. Not even 5 minutes after being awake, the Pied Piper toots his flute and summons a massive soul-eating snake by the name of Sheisha, who is going to end up being another large swath of the game. He proclaims to the people of Tokyo this is his salvation, and Sheisha busts a hole in the firmament, showing the people of Tokyo sunlight. Specifically to Nanashi and company, he tells them to meet him at Tsukichi Konganji to see his version of salvation. Oh yeah, he also kidnaps the Messiah and promptly fucks off. After a lot of chasing your tail throughout Tokyo, it's revealed that Krishna's whole idea was to fill Sheisha full of souls so he could create something called the Cosmic Egg, aka the second worst dungeon in the game, which is supposed to hatch an entire new universe, all because the Christian god YHVH gave human beings the power of observation, which trapped all of the, I guess you could call them lesser gods or nature gods, behind a name and a physical form. Krishna wants to return all the gods and demons to their original nature-related forms and remove observation from humanity. Dagda wants the cosmic egg so that he can elevate humanity to godhood and remove the need for gods entirely. It almost strikes me as like the reason of Musubi for some reason. Like, I know it's not, but to me it's similar to the reason of Musubi. But then again, I might be misinterpreting it as well, so I mean, I'll have to think about that and get back to you guys. At the very end of all this, you have a choice. You can side with Dagda and give birth to an entire new universe, or you can side with your friends and return everything to the status quo. I went ahead and sided with my friends. That got me what's called the peace ending, which we'll discuss later on. Also, heads up, I don't really know anything about the other ending, the massacre ending, so I'm probably going to end up doing a secondary playthrough just to get the massacre ending so that I can tell you guys what's what. Anyway, last writing of this script, the section dedicated to the characters was incredibly brief and very scathing. Like I stated in the introduction, it's not fair for me to be incredibly nasty to characters when it's the fault of the writers. So I decided to give brief background on each character and maybe my opinions depending on who we're talking about. Last little disclaimer about the characters. As I describe them, you will probably notice that there is a bit of a trend in that each character embraces a kind of trope. Well, be that as it may, let's get started with Asahi. Asahi is your childhood friend. She's been there with you through thick and thin and ends up starting the path of being a hunter with you. I don't really have much in the way of feelings towards Asahi. I mean, she's a childhood friend stereotype through and through. She's in love with Nanashi. She does anything she can to remain upbeat and cheerful in any and every situation. I mean, if this was a high school setting instead of the apocalypse, we'd be rooting for her to get the guy. Her dad runs the Kinshicho Hunters Association bar, which the two of you frequent in the beginning. Next is Navarre. Navarre is the ghost of a samurai who died training along Flynn and company. He originally appeared in Shin Megami Tensei 4 as a snotty rich kid who did some really untoward shit towards Flynn and his friends. It looks to me like he learned some humility after dying in original 4. He's the mascot character of the group, whiny at some points and all too full of himself at other points. Some of you might like mascot characters, but I don't like them. In the Persona games, anytime I had to look at Teddy or Morgana for the first half of the game, it was just pure grinding on my ears. Though, to Navarre's credit, he's not as bad as those two. Navarre is the brother of Gaston, who we'll end up talking about here in a little bit. Next is Isabeau. Like Flynn and Navarre, Isabeau came from Shin Megami Tensei 4. She trained alongside Flynn and Walter and Jonathan. Walter and Jonathan I'm probably not going to discuss in this video at all. I'd rather save their discussion for when I actually complete original Shin Megami Tensei 4. It's just important to note that Walter and Jonathan are already dead, and Lucifer and Merkaba are wearing both of their skins. Respectively, Lucifer is in Walter's skin and Merkaba is in Jonathan's skin. So Isabeau not only has to worry about her friend Flynn being kidnapped, but she also has to look at the faces of her dead friends being worn by the Chief Demon and Chief Angel, respectively. Anyway, next comes Nozomi. In base Shin Megami Tensei 4, she issues a challenge quest to retrieve some film for her camera, and she gives you her spare camera. She ultimately becomes Queen of the Fairies in Yoyogi Park and initially only joins you to help sort out a problem with a King Frost in the lake portion. Nozomi in particular is really irritating for me because I really wanted to like this character. When she's not spitting out really bad like lingo, She's likable, but she spends a lot of time doing exactly that, and I just can't get past that hello fellow children kind of atmosphere. She plays a part in getting Danu, which is a character related to Dagda, to the cosmic egg to try to talk some sense into Inanna, which is Dagda and Danu's mother. The cosmic egg is also where she drops a lot of the hey, I'm a cool mom kind of lingo. So next comes Gaston. Gaston is a samurai as well, and he only shows up initially to help you defeat Sheisha. He commands his own unit of samurai, which comes with merit and arrogance, the latter of which he practically sweats buckets. To Gaston, the people of Tokyo are beneath him. They're actually less than beneath him. To him, the people of Tokyo are an absolute infestation. And if it weren't for the divine powers, he would have been an exterminator by now. His disdain for Tokyo is only matched by his absolute hatred for his brother Navarre, who sullied the family name. See, not only did Navarre do some really nasty shit to Flynn and company, who were supposed to be his fellow samurai, but he also convinced his parents to buy his way out of being a samurai, and apparently put out a challenge quest for other samurai to escort him somewhere he wouldn't be found by demons. It's there he pretty much lived out the remainder of his days, which wasn't a long time considering he shows up as a ghost in SMT4A, and Gaston practically disowns him. Alright, so next in the pecking order is Hallelujah. Hallelujah wasn't bad. He was a character that I'm moderately unsure about how I feel about him. On the one hand, I wanted to tell him to toughen up a bit, to sack up. Everybody else is, trying their hardest. You're just wallowing in your own self-pity. But on the other hand, I did like watching him, find his footing. So Hallelujah kind of balances the scales in a sense when it comes to how I feel about him. Which for a point was the leader of the Ashurakai. No spoilers if you want to play the game yourself, but at some point Abe is not the leader of the Ashurakai. Anyway, Abe sends Hallelujah to keep an eye on Nanashi and crew at some point I don't remember, and he elects to stay with the group to see their plans through to the end. He's got a little fox demon called Cyrenup for a partner, I hope I pronounced that right, and it's also later revealed that he's a half demon. A twist that M. Night Shyamalan would be pretty proud of. God, I hope I pronounced that right too. You'd think I ran a deli with the amount of butchering I do in this video. And finally we have Toki. Toki is the character that I kept as my partner the longest. I'm gonna be completely honest with you, I forgot entirely what Toki does. From the moment that she becomes a part of your party for the first time all the way up until the events of the Tokugawa Mandela. So you know what I did? I went and checked a wiki and I paraphrased. She's assigned to help you guys track down Flynn. The only difference in motive here is she's sent to assassinate Flynn for the killing of Yuriko, who was the previous leader of the Ring of Gaia. During the assassination attempt, the party repels her, and later on she helps the party escape Krishna at some point, but not before Krishna reveals to the party that Nanashi is a corpse revived by Dagda. And finally, she helps seal the 4 jars of the Tokugawa Mandala, the jars pretty much forcing Toki to come to terms with her feelings about her entire life, including the budding feelings of love that she has for Nanashi. I think part of the reason why I put Toki's story out of my mind is because I didn't really care that much for the love triangle between Nanashi, Toki, and Asahi. But the other factor at play was, again, the amount of time between each session playing this game. So really, while I didn't care much for Toki's story, like I said, she ended up being the most useful character out of all of Nanashi's friends. Also, in both iterations of this script, I had this weird section where I tried really hard to formulate an opinion that was either positive or negative on this game. It was like I was kind of weighing the pros and cons of this and trying to lean one way or the other, but it just didn't work out and sounded like a rambling, incoherent mess when I read it back. So ultimately I changed it to just a section where I talk about things that I liked and things that I didn't like and missed opportunities. It was like I was trying to put out some sort of like hard-hitting hit piece in some points and, rise it up from the ashes in others, but it didn't really work out because nothing really hit me as terrible. The things that I didn't like, I just didn't like. It wasn't like it was bad, I didn't really have feelings for the stuff that didn't really resonate with me. Oh, outside of Nozomi's bad dialogue options. There were points where listening to her talk felt like somebody was dragging a cheese grater across my brain. But anyway, we're gonna do roughly the same in this section, but instead of me ripping stuff apart, I'm more going to just jump into things that I felt were flat or things that I enjoyed. And I'm gonna go ahead and start with something that I've already mentioned, which is the Tokugawa Mandala section of the game. This particular chunk of game to me felt like it was only tossed in to kind of develop Toki's character a little bit more. It was a section of game that had you running all over Tokyo looking for 4 different mini dungeons where you had to seal jars at the very top of each tower, with each jar corresponding to a different emotion. The purpose of the Tokugawa Mandala was to prevent hunters from summoning their demons. Thing is, because Nanashi had Dagda made him available to use his demons, but you were only able to use things that were specific to your comp. You weren't able to use the terminal system, so you had to do everything on. And Toki volunteers to do the sealing of each and every single jar because she thinks she is just barely emotionless enough to withstand the assault on her psyche. She does, and it kicks her ass and weakens her enough where another character named Inanna can snatch her up. But the Tokugawa Mandala makes Toki's abundance of feeling of love for Nanashi completely feel artificial to me, which is where I just kind of started tuning things out and trying to move through this game really quickly. So I also have feelings on Gistan, and they're not entirely feelings of, hate, more just disdain. Personally, I feel like this game could have done without Gistan, or at the very least made him a character that only shows up to do battle with Sheisha and that's it. I mean, yes, he does end up getting humbled after he loses command of his troops, but that kind of humbling really does nothing for his arrogance. He just doesn't add anything further to the story in my opinion either. Like, I don't hate him, but I don't like him either. And something I think that could have been expanded upon was Nanashi being a reincarnation of Akira, who founded the Eastern Kingdom of Mikado. I mean, you get a couple dream sequences of just after the firmament with Skins and Akira and Fujiwara, and then a major reveal that Nanashi is the reincarnation of Akira. It felt like it was just tossed in there. I mean, something I think would have been kind of cool is if they would have done something to the effect of like a vision quest from Devil Summoner Soul Hackers, where you play through like the Sky Tower as Akira, and then you get to see his exact thoughts on the creation of the Eastern Kingdom of Mikado and setting up a country on top of this big old rock mass. But no, you get a couple of dream sequences peppered here and there, and that's about it. Alright, it looks to me like I've spent the majority of this video complaining. I mean, I'm not ripping it apart like the last iteration, but there's still not a lot that I talked about that I enjoyed. So I figure I'd better get into that before the single longest part of this video. So I thoroughly enjoyed everything up through Sheisha's introduction. So everything up through Kanda no Yashiro and the Pied Piper, Krishna's introduction. The opening cutscene was fun, the tutorials were fun, the sequence of Nanashi walking towards the light was pretty awesome in my opinion. Nanashi's resurrection was really well done, just all of it was so much fun to play through and so much fun to watch. Watching the panic ensue in Asahi's voice when she realizes that Nanashi and her have been duped by Odin into releasing Krishna was a really good setup for the rest of the game. And while I didn't really much care for Nozomi, I did like walking through the fairy forest. I think all of the cherry blossom trees were just gorgeous. Yoyogi Park was one of my favorite settings. And I didn't mind fighting through Sheisha 3 times because the mechanics for Sheisha changed every single time you fought him. And speaking of Sheisha, there's a point where you get to meet back up with Flynn, but he's different, and you get this image here. The image just sits for a minute, allowing you to take in just whatever is staring back at you from the screen. This particular hyper-realistic image of Sheisha combined with Flynn is so out of place with the rest of the game, but it just doesn't really matter because it does feel in place. It describes just how rough Flynn had it with the divine powers and just how much damage Sheisha is doing to Flynn while Sheisha is in possession of him. And then it goes back to the kind of cartoony anime style, which was a little bit of a letdown, but either way, this hyper-realistic image, it got to me. I wasn't expecting it, and I almost considered not even putting the image up in the video, but ultimately I did because, hey, there's a spoiler warning at the beginning for a reason, and I'm gonna take advantage of it. I'm sorry, there's one more section before we get to the longest talking point in this game, and that's gameplay. I'm going to make it brief as possible, so we're going to look at exploration, then combat, then apps and app points, then demon whispering, and then we'll move out of gameplay. Exploration is split 2 different ways. If you've played SMT4 or SMT3, you'll recognize it real easy. For overworld exploration, you have a nice world map and a small little cursor that's supposed to represent your player character. You move the cursor across the map, and then you'll enter dungeons by pressing X or A or whatever the confirmation button is on whatever system you're playing. When you enter said area, you'll be put in like a third-person field of view where you'll take control of an actual player model. That's it. The battle system is pretty much beat for beat from SMT4. It's turn-based, so you and the enemy take turns wailing on each other until one of you dies. If you strike a critical or hit a weakness, sometimes you'll smirk. Smirking guarantees a critical on your next turn with that character, and also depending on the spell that's used during smirk, can cure all ailments or instant kill enemies or so on and so forth, lower certain stats. You get it. On top of smirk, anytime you hit a weakness or a critical, you will get an extra turn called a press turn, and your turn icon will be split in half instead of disappearing entirely, meaning there's a possibility that you can have 8 total actions on your turn with 2 actions per party member. Just keep in mind that enemies can also score extra turns on you and can also smirk on you. In SMT4 base, that is a very quick lesson to learn because smirking enemies will whoop your ass. In the SMT4 duology, you get app points that you can spend on extra passive skills or upgrades to your comp or upgrades to your smartphone in this iteration of the game. You get app points from leveling up or from finding dead people in the world. This is how you're going to increase the amount of spells you know. This is how you're going to increase the amount of demons you can carry. This is how you're going to increase a lot of stuff. So making use of app points is recommended. If not recommended, then necessary. Now, sometimes you will actually keep a demon long enough. Actually, a lot of the times you will keep a demon long enough for it to learn all of its skills. If said demon does learn all of its skills, you will enter a screen at the end of battle called Demon Whisper. Demon Whisper allows you to copy-paste spells from Demon A to Nanashi, or Flynn if you're playing SMT4 base. This will be the only way that you're able to get Nanashi and Flynn to learn magic, like, at all. Some skills, however, will not be able to translate over because they are demon-specific skills, kind of like the Pleromas and Resistances, which grant resistance and give bonuses to certain attacks. And that covers mechanics. Now we can look at the end game, which is what I'm going to be talking about the longest. Well, maybe. I mean, this whole video is fucking long, but you know, the dungeon itself felt just as long as this video, so. YHVH's universe, or what I call the final dungeon. I'm just gonna say it, this fucker's long. And I mean really fucking long. For reference, here's the map. I had to divide it up so that it would all fit on the screen. Well, fit on the screen proper. You can take a screenshot, or I think I'm going to put a link in the description below for the map to this place so that you don't have to spend nearly as long walking through this motherfucker. Even using Estoma, this dungeon took forever. I can't imagine trying to walk through this place with random battles still active. Let me tell you what. And it has every trap, almost, that you experience in the game. It doesn't have damage floors, but YHVH's domain has teleport points, trap floors, one-way doors, the whole 9 yards, and of course the move from each section, or brain as it's called, you have to fight a boss. Moving from first brain to second brain, you fight Lucifer, Lucifuge, and Beelzebub. From the second to the third brain, you fight Merkaba, Azrael, and Aniel. And finally, third brain to the fourth brain, you fight Metatron, followed by an army of Metatron. And finally, before you go and fight God, you have to fight Satan. Satan only fights you to judge whether or not you are worthy of going and fighting YHVH. If he deems you worthy, you'll go fight YHVH, and Satan will judge whether or not YHVH is still fit to be God. His boss fight is wonderful in that it absolutely kicked my ass 5 times. The first 2 or 3 times I had no problems clearing his first half, but before that, some setup. You take control of 2 different parties. The first party is your party, Nanashi and your demons, and the second party is Flynn and his friends. And turns alternate between Nanashi and God and Flynn and God. So Nanashi will take a turn, then God will take a turn, then Flynn will take a turn, then God will take a turn, and so on. Back to the present. My initial party was Izanami, Seraphim, Mastamuth, with Demiurge and Tokisada as a backseat. Small buffs, no D-Kaja, no D-Kunda, no MP recovery during battle outside of items, which went pretty quickly. 3 times of this, and I realized I had to reassess my party and go back in. After doing some poking around, I decided I was going to fuse Inanna, Super Angel, and Mott. So here's the process for the demons and skills. For starters, I deleted and refused Demiurge and leveled him up so that I could put Spirit Drain on Nanashi. Like a dumbass, I got rid of Spirit Drain on both Demiurge and Nanashi as they leveled up. He then became one half of the fusion material to create Anat, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Afterwards, I purchased the fusion material for Cernunnos and fused him with Alciel for Tzizmatil, and also bought and fused Kaiwan and Virtue for Ishtar. Then I took Anat, Tzizmatil, and Ishtar to create Inanna. I then had to refuse Demiurge a third time and fuse him with Lucifuge to get Mott. I already had Super Angel in the compendium, so I farmed out some more Maka in the challenge quest A God Slayer Needs Maka just to buy her. I took full advantage of the challenge quests that I normally wouldn't take advantage of just because I wanted this game over. Anyway, if you haven't fused Super Angel yet, the easiest materials towards the end would be Demoniho and Israfel, or Titania and Ganesha. There's a pretty good calculator on GitHub I'll link in the description below. Anyway, my next step after I fused these demons was grinding, and technically this step was split before and after fusion. To start, I focused entirely on getting Demiurge through all of his learned skills to put Spirit Drain on Nanashi. Then Demiurge got fused away. That took about 3 heavy grimoires, which I farmed from the quest A God Slayer Needs levels. Inanna starts at level 92, so I needed another 8 to put her at level 100. Mott needed 11 heavy grimoires, and Super Angel needed a whopping 18. So I ended up with the goal of farming 40 heavy grimoires. I overshot this goal a little bit, a lot, by about 18 actually. So I got double what I needed for Super Angel. By that point I was like, what's another 40 grimoires? So I farmed enough to get all of my demons up to level 120. I learned a couple things during this session of grinding. First, Aramitama is the best for getting heavy grimoires in large quantities. They drop 2 to 5 heavy grimoires, 3 to 5 of the friend grimoire, and 3 to 5 of the light grimoire. Second, and I'm not entirely sure if it's true, but if you spend too long in the dungeon, the amount of grimoires that you get will end up bottlenecked. If somebody would be so kind as to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, I would very much appreciate that. I just know that I felt like I was getting a whole lot less after the first, 6. Afterward, I said screw it. I still don't care very much for the stats that I have, so I went ahead and I started the challenge quest A God Slayer Needs items and farmed incenses galore. But I didn't spend too long in here because that was just way too much effort for the reward that I was getting. My 4th attempt went roughly the same as the first 3, but my 5th attempt I finally rolled credits. Let me tell you, the peace ending was definitely worth it, even if, and this is something I didn't really cover earlier, but the game tries to shoehorn you into the peace ending. So I don't particularly mind that I got shoehorned into this ending, but because it was so worth the last dungeon. You get to see the entire cast rebuilding Tokyo without the stress of everything that's going on around them weighing on their shoulders. Nanashi finally cuts a grin. The rest of the cast is able to go off and live their own life. It's a pleasant ending. And this is probably the best ending that Flynn could get too, though I'm probably talking out of my ass because I haven't finished that game, but I have heard some pretty gnarly shit, so based off the information that I have and the spoilers I got, this probably could be the best ending that Flynn could get. And now that we're reaching the end here, I'm back to my original conundrum, and I think I closed doors on how I feel about this game. Completing this game left me feeling like I was completing a bi-weekly serialized anime with a year-long runtime. It was nice, tied up with a neat little bow, and I didn't have to think too long or hard about the ending. I don't particularly mind endings like this. They're fun, mostly satisfying, and they leave me feeling pretty good afterwards. However, I do recognize that this is a Megami Tensei game, and even playing through the other ones at the rate I'm at, the experience is incredibly different. Playing the other games feels like I'm playing art. It feels like I'm playing a social commentary. It doesn't play like I'm watching an anime. Getting the best ending doesn't mean you're getting the best ending. You're left completely wondering if you've made the proper choices. You're left wondering if the choice you made was the best for humanity, or the best for your character, or even the best for yourself. The other games play a whole lot more like a commentary on nihilism than anything else. I also thought long and hard about who I would recommend this game to, and this is not a game that I would recommend to somebody who is looking to make the jump from Persona to Megami Tensei. There are other games for that. I'm not even sure if I would recommend it to other JRPG enthusiasts, if I'm being honest. I'd probably recommend this game to somebody like myself, somebody who doesn't really have the time to sit down and play video games. Somebody who's only completed a handful of titles, or somebody who is looking to start the Megami Tensei franchise without any sort of JRPG experience behind their belt. I hung on to that last word like really long. I mean, this is a game that you can pick up and put down at will. There's a save anywhere function. You can spend 5 minutes playing it or 5 hours. And for the most part, you don't necessarily have to dedicate a lot of time to exploring dungeons. Even the final dungeon, long as it is, you can pick up and put down no problem. I mean, sure, you'll have to check your map and see what you've cleared and what you haven't, and kind of retrace your steps, but it's doable. But I'm hanging on to this video like I'm going through a Midwestern goodbye, so I'm going to start closing out now. I had a moderate amount of fun playing this game. Actually, I had a lot of fun playing this game, even with my numerous complaints. It has its ups and downs, and it has its use cases, and it has its niche, just like anything else. And I appreciate what the game gave to me. It gave me a starting point, and it gave me the excitement for the rest of the series. So while I can't say that it is an awesome Megami Tensei game, I can say that it is an awesome game altogether for what it gave me. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and do the YouTube Holy Trinity for me. Like, comment, subscribe. It does help me out quite a lot. This is probably the longest video that I have put out to date, besides my Cyberpunk how-tos, which I still have to finish. I know. I'm just completely unmotivated to break those down right now. Hell, I'm even thinking of reworking them into a more digestible format, and I just got done talking about the Midwestern goodbye. Anyway, I love you guys, and I'll see you later on.